Persistent attempts at regional integration eventually led to the establishment of the Caricom single market and economy. This was built on the provisions of the Grand Anse Declaration, which sought to boost local economies and enhance integration. The need to grapple with globalization, compete with trade internationally, having access into lucrative markets, along with ensuring its people benefit from improved living standards, are some of the foundational reasons small and developing nation-states of the Caribbean sought to unite. This week on Guyana 411, we will be looking at the Caribbean community, Caricom, and the single market. I am Tiffany Rogers. The first attempts at regional integration began with the establishment of the West Indian Federation. Successive attempts at regional integration have led to a much clearer path being established.
Caribbean territories recognized that they shared a common history, therefore it was best to work together for a common future. Realizing that for them to compete in an increasingly globalized world, unity was needed to penetrate trade markets. Established in 1958, the West Indies Federation came into being by the British Caribbean Federation Act of 1956 with the aim of establishing a political union among its 10 member states. Although a plan for a customs union was drawn up, emphasis was not placed on the economic aspect of the federation during the 4 years of its existence. Economically, the region remained as it had been for centuries, and not even free trade was introduced between the member countries during this period. The West Indies Federation came to an end in 1962, but its end, in many ways, must be regarded as the real beginning of what is now the Caribbean community. Fred Kosher reflects on the atmosphere during this period.
I think I should say a word about the period immediately after the breakup of the West Indies Federation in 1962, when there was, throughout the region, a great deal of despair perhaps, and certainly fragmentation among the various countries as each island made efforts to go its own way.
The Caribbean Free Trade Area, CARIFTA, was officially formed during the 4th Heads of Government Conference in Barbados, October 1967. The Free Trade Association was to be the beginning of what would become the Caribbean Common Market, the establishment of which would be conducted through a number of stages towards the achievement of a viable economic unity of Caribbean territories. Let's hear what former Secretary General of Caricom, Edwin Charles, has to say.
We started in 1968 with a free trade area, CARIFTA, remember. We moved through CARIFTA in 1973 to a community and common market. And we have moved from there to a community including a single market, which now allows us to move not just goods, but also services, capital, skills.
Guyana, one of the first signatories to CARICOM after attaining independence in 1966, thought it fit to unite the Caribbean through the arts based on the incorporation of theatrical and performing arts, visual arts, culinary arts, and other forms of entertainment. A similar event was hosted in Puerto Rico in the year 1952. This led to Prime Minister Forbes Burnham holding a number of conferences with talented Caribbean artists for the consultation of the first ever Caribbean Festival of Arts, CARIFESTA, in 1972. The Caribbean Festival of Arts made such an impact that Guyana's Prime Minister, as well as heads of government from Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago, saw a greater need for integration in trade and equal opportunity among citizens in the respective countries. This led to the formation of CARICOM. We all may know the meaning of CARICOM, which is Caribbean Community, but what more is there to it than just knowing of this acronym?
a new class of Caribbean enterprise that is built to world standards, that can compete without special coddling within our own region, that can be the spearhead of our regional efforts to hold our own and to succeed in the new economies of the Americas, which is on the point of being constructed, and in the global economy, which is now radically emerging as a fully liberalized entity.
The Caribbean community was formed by 4 Caribbean states, namely Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana. These countries are signatories to the Treaty of Chaguaramas, a juridical hybrid consisting of the Caribbean community as a separate legal entity from the common market, which had its own discrete legal personality. This Treaty of Chaguaramas is the treaty under which Caricom was established on July 4, 1973, including the Caribbean Common Market. This development replaced the Caribbean Free Trade Association, CARIFTA, which came to an end on May 1, 1974. Caricom was formed to address a number of issues faced by Caribbean states.
A watershed in the community's life. As on July 4th, heads of government signed the Treaty of Chaguaramas, establishing the Caribbean Community and Common Market.
The Caribbean community is represented by a standard displaying the interlocking of 2 seas. The 2 seas are in the form of broken links in a chain, symbolizing both unity and the break from our colonial past. The standard of the Caribbean community features a blue background, the upper part being light blue, representing the sky, and the lower part dark blue, representing the Caribbean Sea. The yellow circle in the center of the standard represents the sun, on which the interlocking seas are printed in black, completing the logo of the Caribbean community. The community aims at attaining improved standards of living and work, full employment of labor and other factors of production, accelerated, coordinated, and sustained economic development and convergence, expansion of trade and economic relations with third states, enhanced levels of international competitiveness, organization for increased production and productivity, the achievement of a greater measure of economic leverage and effectiveness of member states in dealing with third states, groups of states, and entities of any description, enhanced coordination of member states' foreign and economic policies, and enhanced functional cooperation, including more efficient operation of common services and activities for the benefit of its people, accelerated promotion of greater understanding among its peoples, and the advancement of their social, cultural, and technological development. Intensified activities in areas such as health, education, transportation, and telecommunications. After 1973, a number of other Caribbean countries joined the community, which has a membership of 15 countries. These include Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago.
Guyana has been, I think, a significant contributor to Caricom in a variety of ways. The first is it was one of the founding members of the integration movement, one of the 4 countries that established a CARIFTA. And subsequent to 1973, we have tried, I believe, on as many fronts as possible to pursue not only the strengthening of the membership, but also by providing leadership, offering to host the headquarters, and supporting the initiatives intended to defend Caricom's interests.
In 1989, 16 years after Caricom was formed, the Treaty of Chaguaramas needed revision to accommodate the transformation from a common market into a single market economy, allowing a basis for internationally competitive production of goods and the provision of services. An intergovernmental task force comprising of representatives of all member states produced 9 protocols for the purpose of amending the treaty. These 9 protocols were later combined to create a new version of the treaty. Progressively in 2001, the new instrument governing the Caricom body, titled the Revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, including the Caricom Single Market and Economy, was signed by 8 member states, including Guyana, in Bahamas at the 22nd regular meeting of the Conference of Caricom Heads of Government. The revised treaty applies to all Caricom member states except the Bahamas and Montserrat.
A Caribbean single market and single economy simply represents a necessary, though not sufficient, option by which the sustainable developments of the societies of the region, individually and collectively, can and must be pursued and attained. The Caribbean also looks to a future in which it cannot envision continued reliance on the trade preferences of the past, which provided stability and market assuredness for some of our traditional industries.
CARICOM now has a membership of 15 Caribbean states, in addition to 5 associate members and 8 observer members. Each of these countries has functioning institutions governed by the Caribbean community, seeking the best interests of the citizens living and trading in these states. Some of these are the CARICOM Secretariat in Guyana, the Caribbean Examinations Council in Barbados and Jamaica, and the Caribbean Court of Justice in Trinidad and Tobago.
Realizing a unified region meant that the necessary framework had to be put in place. The region's integration efforts were therefore transformed with the revision of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which was completed in 2001.
Recognizing the need to have a clearly defined framework to foster deeper regional integration, the Treaty of Chaguaramas was revised in 2001. This revised treaty would detail the measures which would be taken by each member state so that they could come together as a collective in a single market and economic space. Some of the areas that speaks to policy coordination and unification include anti-dumping measures, banking and securities, competition policy, consumer protection, food and drug regulations and labeling, customs, manufacture and good regulations. Critical organs were formed to lay the foundation for CARICOM to oversee the coordination of policies in areas such as agriculture, trade, foreign policy, services, and competition. Anisha Ali, Foreign Service Officer, explains how this new instrument is beneficial to CARICOM, as countries coordinate in almost every sector that affects the day-to-day lives of citizens.
The revised treaty was needed because it helps to deepen the integration process among member states. It allows for businesses to pool their resources to become more competitive on the regional level as well as internationally. It allows for persons to interact in the region at a certain level. I mean, there are restrictions. There are only 10 categories of persons who can move. But it allows persons to move, to experience other country, to work in those countries, to experience the culture of those people, and to gain a better understanding of how the region operates. We coordinate in terms of our negotiating trade agreements, and we coordinate in the area of security as well. What more? We coordinate almost everything, even in finance we coordinate. So it is beneficial.
Some of the organs include the Community Council, the Council for Finance and Planning, the Council for Trade and Economic Development, the Council for Foreign Community Relations, and the Council for Human and Social Development. The Council for Trade and Economic Development, COTED, has been working to promote trade and economic development of the Caribbean community and oversees the operations of the single market and economy. It is also responsible for the establishment of measures to accelerate structural diversification of industrial and agricultural production and to promote measures for development and marketing of service, development of energy and natural resources on a sustainable basis, development of science and technology, and the development policies for the protection of and the preservation of the environment and for sustainable development. Meanwhile, COFCOR determines relations between the community and international organizations and promotes the development of mutual relations among member states. while the COFAP is responsible for economic policy coordination, financial and monetary integration of member states. The revised treaty improved on the dispute settlement mechanisms that existed, which created a better avenue for member states to resolve areas of difficulties with the community's law. The Council of Legal Education operates 3 law schools in the region: the Norman Manley Law School in Jamaica, the Woodin Law School in Trinidad, and the Eugene Dupuche Law School in the Bahamas. These institutions provide training in the region for lawyers wishing to practice in the region. This was facilitated following an agreement with Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and the University of the West Indies and the University of Guyana. Member states were also obligated to sign on to the Dispute Settlement Protocol. The Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, the Council of Ministers, and the Community Competition Commission, CCC, are the bodies responsible for resolving disputes. Other methods of dispute settlement included the good offices process, mediation, arbitration, and conciliation. Established in 2001, the Caribbean Court of Justice is the Caribbean Regional Judicial Tribunal created with exclusive jurisdiction for applying and interpreting the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. The CCJ is the arbitration court for disputes arising under the CSME and guarantees accessibility, fairness, efficiency, and transparency for delivering clear and just decisions within member states. The CCJ is also meant to serve as the final court of appeal in civil and criminal cases for the region. However, while all 12 Caricom member states have signed on to the CCJ in its original jurisdiction, only 3 countries so far have accepted the CCJ as their final court of appeal. These countries are Barbados, Belize, and Guyana. With a framework to guide coordination and valiant efforts to attain such, it is safe to say that Caricom has come a far way with its integration process, especially in the area of health, education, development, financing, and the ability to cope with natural disaster.
Have been able to work together in our external negotiations, beginning with the Lome Convention of the 1970s and more recently with REPA that was concluded and is about to be formally signed. We are now the oldest integration movement in the developing world, and we have advanced along the path of integration further than most other integration movements, perhaps exceeded only by the European Union.
The Caricom Single Market and Economy, CSME, is an arrangement among the Caricom states for the creation of a single enlarged economic space through the removal of restrictions resulting in the free movement of goods, services, people, capital, and technology. It is one of the vehicles used to fast-track regional integration. We now take a look at the CSME and its working in the region.
In 2006, after a period of 17 years, the CSME was established. The ultimate goal of the CSME is to provide the foundation for growth and development through the creation of a single economic space for the production of competitive goods and services within the Caricom region. The CSME is at the heart of Caricom's economic integration, and economic integration is one of 4 pillars in which Caricom rests in pursuit of its objectives. Already, the CSME has had an impact on the lives of citizens and businesses in the region. CSME Focal Point Officer at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Anisha Ali, explains.
When member states signed the revised treaty in the Bahamas in 2001, member states were required to remove all restrictions that contradict the revised treaty and to not add any new restrictions. This was done in stages. Based on the treaty, the 5 regimes were developed. That is, the free movement of skills, the free movement of goods, the free movement of services, the free movement of capital, and the rights of establishment. Subsequently, an audit was done under these 5 regimes to identify the restrictions in each member state. And this is what formed the basis for the implementation of the CSME.
Some initial movement has been made in this direction with the allowance of free movement of certain categories of workers, spouses, and other immediate dependents.
Persons can take advantage of the CSME regime by they can move using the CSME skill certificate. They can also trade under the free movement of goods regime because they have duty-free treatment for goods of community origin. They can also set up a business in another member state by virtue of the rights of establishment. They have that right. And they can move money freely. Convertibility of currency is there.
Like other areas of work in the Caricom integration process, the implementation and operation of the single market and economy is being undertaken by a number of stakeholders. Principal among them are the Caricom Secretariat, member states, and the community institutions. There are 10 categories for which nationals can be qualified under the free movement of skills.
These were approved by the heads of government, and these categories are the university graduates with first degree level, media persons, sports persons, artists, musicians, registered nurses, trained teachers, artisans with a CVQ, household domestics with a CVQ, and persons who would have had an associate degree or its equivalent.
In the drive to make the region internationally competitive, the CSME promises a vision of much deeper economic integration than a single market. The transition to a single economy entails significant new commitments to the consolidation of national policies in support of Caricom's long-term goals that have so far proven difficult to achieve. The decision in 1989 to revive the economic integration movement, resulting in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas and the establishment of the Caricom Single Market and Economy CSME, was a move to deepen the integration movement and to better respond to the challenges and opportunities presented by globalization.
Guyana has always been seen as having the potential to feed the entire Caribbean, given its vast arable land and freshwater resources. It is no surprise, therefore, that in an effort to reduce the region's food import bill, which approximates to $4 billion annually, it has been given lead responsibility. Despite having one of the lowest import cost per resident, which is US $0.27, Guyana has committed to taking steps aimed at increasing efficiency and productivity within the agricultural sector, not only for itself, but for the region's benefit. In this feature, we look at some of the activities being undertaken.
Permanent Secretary of Guyana's Agriculture Ministry tells us of his agency's work towards realizing the objective of CARICOM's Common Agricultural Policy.
We've been doing quite a lot. In fact, we've been working with government policy, which treats Guyana as a favored destination for investment in agriculture. We've been inviting all of our sister CARICOM countries to come and invest in Guyana. The only response thus far, the only significant response thus far, has been the Santa Fe project in Region 9, where Sir Giffen Simpson out of Barbados has invested significantly. They have close to 1,000 acres of rice. They're exporting that rice to Brazil. They have cattle, they have horses, they have lots of other crops being grown. So the first step that we've taken is to invite them to come invest at very, very good cost for the land. It's unbelievably good. The second step is that we've been working closely with all of the agencies in CARICOM. We're working with the CARICOM Secretariat, as you're aware of. We're working with CARDI. We're working with even some non-Caribbean ones like FAO and ICA to push the common themes that we have.
With its new role of securing the region's food supply and reducing its $4 billion annual food import bill, the government and the people of Guyana are involved in a drive to find new and improved ways of production. Minister of Government Winston Jordan, who holds responsibility for the nation's finances, and Noel Holder, the country's agriculture minister, talk about the importance of diversifying the country's agriculture sector.
With proper maintenance, with proper modernization, proper use of technology and so on, diversification and so on, these industries can still be good for quite a number of years in the future. And importantly, two of them are agriculture based, and agriculture can absorb labor faster than many other industries. So we have to look at these industries with a more critical eye.
We're going to fully exploit this 3,000 acres of improved pastures for cattle, our sheep and goat potential, and of course our orchard crop potential will be developed so that it will be a model. So new ventures in the savannas will have a source, not only as an example of how things should be done and can be done, but also to get planting material, seed material, and things of that nature.
However, given the changing nature of the world's climate, the importance of planning for global warming and rising sea levels has not eluded the man who is expected to execute his government's policies for the agriculture sector. Noel Holder tells us about these policies.
Government's policy is centered not only in rationalizing our production coastally, improving our drainage systems, but also in developing these new areas of activity. And that really is government's trust, or will be, over the next 5 years and beyond. Largely because the drainage system in Guyana is limited to between 1.5 and 2 inches in 24 hours. As you can see, any rainfall above that will have catastrophic cause a tremendously bad situation for the country. Guyana therefore has to look in the medium to long term in moving its agricultural base from the coastline into the interior, where the higher ground is. The two main areas for new development will be the intermediate savannas, which is just behind the coast, and the Rupununi savannas. The Rupununi region 9 being the largest area, the largest region in Guyana.
Planning and no work will not contribute meaningfully to ensuring the region's food security or reducing its import bill. Let's look at some of the agencies tasked with ensuring that the Common Agricultural Policy becomes reality and its goals achieved. Chief Executive Officer of the National Agriculture Research Extension Institute, Dr. Udu Humnot, explains.
For a number of years now, we have been trying to develop new or modern technologies for the farming community, especially as these relate to adaptation to climate change. Because in Guyana, we focus on food security. We're focusing on the export market as well. The whole idea of shaded cultivation that we would have been promoting initially on a small scale was for demonstration purposes, to show the importance and the value of the technology. When I talk about food security, for example, if I were to expand a little, it means we need to have food not only at certain times of the year, but throughout the year. And similarly for any export market, if we are talking marketing or value addition in Guyana, we have to be able to produce year-round. And that is the basis for developing these types of technologies.
Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, Dr. Dwight Walrond, talk about the development of the livestock industry.
I guess you would have heard about the Ibini Livestock Station, which in the decades ago was one of the premier ranches, not only in the Caribbean, but in the world, when you look at the layout and the actual structure that we had in place. At GLDA, we have revamped operations at Ibini, where we're focusing on our beef production and also small ruminant. The small ruminant aspect, we're focusing more on the black belly sheep. I think it would be right for me to say we have the largest population of purebred black belly in the Caribbean at our Ibini station. But with respect to the cattle production, we're focusing a lot on the beef aspect of things. Currently, dairy is still focused on the coastline of Guyana, more specifically the 5 coastal regions 2 to 6.
Premdat Bisham, NARI's research assistant, tells us more about how technology will be utilized to advance food security. As the NARI continues to explore techniques and the technologies to improve productivity in the agriculture sector, NARI is currently using Brazilian machines to cultivate and harvest cassava at its Cairuni horticulture station as part of its experiment to create cost-effective means of cassava cultivation.
This equipment was brought from Brazil through aid, through Cardi actually. Now we use this here to do cassava planting, as well as fertilizing at the time of planting.
The government of Guyana, through these and the several other departments of the Agriculture Ministry, continues to explore areas of diversification, modern methods of production, and the use of technology, which will ultimately lead to increased efficiency and food safety. This will ensure food security not only for Guyanese people, but people of the entire Caricom region. It will also allow the region to save by reducing the massive food import bill.
Security became the fourth pillar of Caricom to stem transnational crime and domestic criminal activity within member states. Against this backdrop, we examined some projects and programs the region has undertaken to strengthen its security.
At the 16th meeting of the Council for National Security and Law Enforcement last November, Secretary General of Caricom, Orwin LaRock, noted that the region is directly involved as a transit route, safe haven, and a destination for illicit trafficking activities in arms, drugs, and humans. Caricom had previously identified the need to address regional security and had subsequently developed the Caricom Implementation Agency for Crime and the Security Impacts. Impacts was tasked with developing a Caricom crime and a security strategy in 2013. The strategy sought to identify and prioritize the common security risks and threats, areas of intervention and actions to achieve the security levels demanded by Caricom citizens. It is also an invocation of Caricom's political will and a renewal of the vow to establish security as the fourth pillar of Caricom. Arresting the drug trade in particular is a major challenge to Caricom countries. Lacking the resources and the necessary framework for efficiently addressing the situation, Caricom has partnered with more developed countries. Through the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, CBSI, Guyana has partnered with the United States and other nations of the Caribbean to combat the drug trade in transnational crime that threatens the regional security. The CBSI is a collaborative program between Caricom and the United States of America. Outgoing U.S. Charge d'Affaires to Guyana, Brian Hunt, noted that CBSI has been instrumental in building collaboration in regional states.
I'm confident that the programs that these funds are intended to support in basic police training, specialized counter-narcotics training, enhanced border security, and criminal justice will continue to strengthen Guyana's capacity to respond to the threats posed by international criminal elements operating in the region.
The U.S., through the CBSI, has provided $350,000 to Guyana to aid in reducing drug trafficking and to advance public safety and security, as well as to promote social justice.
I have already noticed that there is a Megastar program in which a couple of our officers were trained in relation to a CBSI Connect training exercise, in which we have now gotten the equipment at the police academy.
Simultaneously, Guyana recently commissioned a U.S. Drug Enforcement DEA office. Public Security Minister Kemraj Ramjatan believes that the ancillary information generated from the DEA office will be of tremendous help in curbing drug trafficking.
To have them here in Guyana is going to bolster and be an asset. There's no argument about that. It will bolster and be an asset to the Guyana police force, the CANU, the GRA unit that deals with drug interdiction.
The geographic location of the Caribbean makes it vulnerable to drug trafficking. The vast spaces and the differing economies of the member states make collaboration imperative for devising a structured security plan. The DEA assists Caribbean countries with information that can be vital in reducing this vulnerability the region faces.
So what DEA is bringing is not so much more money, they're bringing the expertise and the people and the networks and the information gathering tools to be able to leverage information and their networks throughout the world.
Aside from combating the trafficking in drugs, the region must address trafficking in persons. In Guyana, the resuscitated Ministerial Task Force on TIP is mandated to collect and disseminate information on measures to curb trafficking and the training of law enforcement and other relevant stakeholders according to the Trafficking in Persons Act No. 2 of 2005. There is also an aggressive awareness program by the Ministry of Social Protection Counter Trafficking in Persons Unit.
We at the Ministry of Social Protection have recognized the key to winning against those heartless, soulless traffickers is education. That's the only key. Education and knowledge of trafficking in persons across all sectors of society are key to beating human traffickers.
Additionally, global terrorism has become another dynamic of transnational organized crimes and violence in the region. For Trinidad and Tobago, this is a burning issue. At last year's Caricom US Summit, the issue of security in the region was addressed.
For those of us who signed on to the resolution, it gives us great benefits and help in that fight against terrorism.
Creating economic opportunities, especially for young people, is a vital tool in undermining criminal organizations, Bahamas Prime Minister Perry Christie says.
When young people arrive at a point where they have a sense of hopelessness, then you cannot control the consequences that flow from that. And that in the region, we have to be able to give our people the hope that there is something meaningful for them.
Financial security is another aspect of securing the region. Many international banks use de-risking in curbing money laundering and the financing of terrorism within the region. De-risking is used by banks to restrict business relations with nations they deem to be a threat due to the lack of necessary framework and legislation to protect national banks. The Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, CFATF, is intended to curb financing of terrorism and to prevent and to control money laundering within the region. The Caribbean region has seen some successes in its efforts to address security. The Joint Regional Communications Center, JRCCC, and the Regional Intelligence Fusion Center, RIFC, are successful initiatives of Caricom impacts for the purpose of supporting the regional security strategy. There are many other measures in place to address regional security, but all regional leaders and the people of the region know that unless all are involved in fighting all forms of crime, all would be consumed.
As Caricom continues its integration efforts to realize a single economic space and economy, Caricom heads will meet from July 4 through 6 for their 37th regular meeting here in Guyana. The meeting will see Chile strengthening relations with Caricom along with bilateral relations with individual member states. That concludes this week's edition of the Guyana 411. The details of these and other stories can be found on GINA's website. Subscribe to our website and YouTube channel to be kept abreast of the latest developments. You can also like and follow us on Facebook and be updated as the news unfolds. Do join us again next week for another edition of Guyana 411. Thank you for watching.